Ranade, Gandhi and Jinnah by Babasaheb Ambedkar. 4. Was Ranade a great man? He was of course a great in his person, vast in physique. He could have been called Your Eminence, as the Irish servant could not pronounce. Your Eminence used respectively to call Cardinal Wiseman his master. He was a man of sanguine temperament, of genial disposition, and versatile in his capacity. He had keenly, which is the sum of all moral qualities, and his sincerity was of the sort which was prescribed by Carlyle. It was not a conscious, braggart sincerity. It was the natural sincerity, a constitutional trait, and not an assumed air. He was wrought only big in his physique and in his sincerity. He was also big in his intellect. Nobody can question that Ranade had intellect of a high caliber. He was not merely a lawyer and a judge of the High Court. He was a first-class economist, a first-class historian, and a first-class educationist, and a first-class divine. He was not a politician. Perhaps it is good that he was not, for if he had been, he might not have been a great man. As Abraham Lincoln said, politicians are a set of men who have interests aside from the interests of the people, and who, to say the most of them, are taken as a mass, at least one long step removed from the honest men. Ranade, though not a politician, was a profound student of politics. Indeed, it would be difficult to find in the history of India any man who could come up to Ranade in the width of his learning, the breadth of his wisdom, and the length of his vision. There was no subject which he did not touch, and in which he did not acquire profundity. His reading was on the scale of the colossal, and every inch he was a scholar. He was great not merely by his standard of his time, but he was great measured by any standard. As I have said, no claim for being a great man can rest on the foundation of sincerity in intellect, either singly or in combination. Ranade could not be called great if he had these two qualities and no more. His title to being a great man must rest upon social purposes he served and on the way he served them. On that there can be no doubt. Ranade is known more as a social reformer than as a historian, economist, or an educationist. His whole life is nothing but a relentless campaign for social reform. It is on his role as a social reformer that this title to being a great man rests. Ranade had both the vision and the courage which the reformer needs, and in the circumstances in which he was born, his vision was no smaller virtue than his courage. That he developed a vision of the Prophet, I am using the word in the Jewish sense, cannot but be regarded as a matter of surprise if the time in which he was born is taken into account. Ranade was born in 1842, some 24 years after the Battle of Kirki, which brought the Maratha Empire to an end. The downfall of the Maratha Empire evoked different feelings among different people. There were men like Natu who served as accessories before the fact. There were some who played the part of accessories after the fact, inasmuch as they were happy that the cursed rule of the Brahmin Peshwa was brought to an end. But there can be no doubt that a large majority of the people of Maharashtra were stunned by the event. When the whole of India was enveloped by the advancing foreign horde and its people being subjugated piece by piece, here in this little corner of Maharashtra lived a sturdy race who knew what liberty was, who had fought for it inch by inch and established it over miles and miles. By the British conquest they had lost what was to them a most precious possession. One can quite imagine how the best intellect of Maharashtra had its mind utterly confounded and its horizon fully and completely darkened. What could be the natural reaction to such a great catastrophe? Can it be other than resignation, defeatism, and surrender to the inevitable? How did Ranade react? Very, very differently. He held out the hope that the fallen shall rise. Indeed, he developed a new faith on which this hope was founded. Let me quote his own words. He said, "I profess implicit faith in two articles of my creed. This country of ours is the true land of promise. This race of ours is the chosen race. He did not rest quiet by merely enunciating his new Mosaic gospel of hope and confidence. He applied his mind to the question of the realization of this hope. The first requisite was, of course, a dispassionate realization of this hope. Analysis of the causes of this downfall. Ranade realized that the downfall was due to a certain weakness in the Hindu social system, and unless these weaknesses were removed, the hope could not be realized. The new gospel was therefore followed by a call to duty. That duty was no other than the duty to reform Hindu society. Social reform became therefore the one duty and dominant purpose of his life. He developed a passion for social reform, and there was nothing he did not do to promote it. His methods included meetings, missions, lectures, sermons, articles, interviews, letters, all carried out with an unrelenting zeal. He established many societies, he founded many journals, but he was not content with this. He wanted something more permanent, something more systematic for promoting the cause of social reform. So he founded the Social Conference, an all-India organization which ran as an adjunct to the Indian National Congress. Year after year, the conference met to discuss the social ills and to find the ways of remedying them, and year after year, Ranade attended its annual sessions as though it was a pilgrimage and fostered the cause of social reform. In fostering the cause of social reform, Ranade showed great courage. Many people of this generation will perhaps laugh at such a claim. Courting prison has become an act of martyrdom in India. It is regarded both as a patriotic act and as an act of courage. Most people who would otherwise be beneath notice, and in whose case it could rightly be said that they were scoundrels who had taken to politics as their last refuge, have by going to prison become martyrs and have acquired a name and fame which, to say the least, is quite astounding. There would be some substance in this view if prison life involved the rigors to which men like Tilak and those of his generation had been subjected. Prison life today has lost all its terrors. It has become a mere matter of detention. Political prisoners are no longer treated as criminals. They are placed in a separate class. There are no hardships to suffer, there is no reputation to lose, and there is no privatization to undergo. It calls for no courage. But even when prison life had, as in the time of Mr. Tilak, its rigors, the political prisoners would make no claim to greater courage than a social reformer. Most people do not realize that society can practice tyranny and oppression against an individual in a far greater degree than a government can. The means and scope that are open to society for repression are more extensive than those that are open to government, as also they are more effective. What punishment in the penal code is comparative in its magnitude and its severity to excommunication? Who has greater courage, the social reformer who challenges society and invites upon himself excommunication, or the political prisoner who challenges the government and incurs a sentence of a few months or a few years? There is also another difference which is often lost of in estimating the courage shown by a social reformer and the political patriot. When the social reformer challenges society, there is nobody to hail him as a martyr. There is nobody even to befriend him. He is loathed and shunned. But when the political patriot challenges government, he has the whole society to support him. He is praised, admired, and elevated as the savior. Who shows more courage, the social reformer who fights alone, or the political patriot who fights under the cover of vast mass of supporters? It would be ideal to deny that Ranade showed courage in taking up the cause of social reform. Indeed, he showed a high degree of courage. For let it be remembered that he lived in times when social and religious customs, however gross and unmoral, were regarded as sacrosanct, and when any doubt questioning their divinity and moral basis was regarded not merely as heterodoxy, but as intolerable, blasphemy and sacrilege followed. The end.